This is Mark Bruzonsky in Washington. I'm the publisher of Wash Report. On the phone is Professor Hisham Ahmed, a Palestinian born in Dheisheh refugee camp near Bethlehem. He now teaches political science at St. Mary's College. Also on the phone is Miko Peled, an Israeli, the son of a famous Israeli general, Madi Peled, who was one of the five commanders of the Six-Day War. Our topic today is the two-state solution real? What we hear in the news all the time is the two-state solution, or has it become a deception, an illusion? Miko, why don't we start with you? You're the Israeli. Do the Israelis really want a two-state solution, or do they just want to carry the negotiations on forever and grab as much territory and resources as they can?
No, Israelis don't want a two-state solution. They never did want a two-state solution, and I think the two-state solution for many years has been a code word for status quo. The possibility for creating a two-state solution ended as soon as Israel started building settlements in the West Bank, and this has been going on for a very, very long time. So I don't believe Israel wants or has any intention of ever allowing the Palestinians any kind of political independence, any kind of recognition of their national aspirations.
Then what are the Americans up to when they continually are telling everybody about the two-state solution?
Well, I don't think the Americans care one way or the other, quite frankly. I think America has this relationship with Israel, which is it's kind of like a dysfunctional parent with a very spoiled child, and they just allow Israel to do whatever Israel wants to do in regards to the Palestinians and the West Bank and so forth, and Gaza. And I don't think the Americans care one way or the other. The Americans have other interests in the region, and what Israel does with the Palestinians, I think, is really not a high priority.
Okay. I kind of would endorse the first part of what you said about the Israeli policy. I have some differences about American policy, but let's go to Hisham. Hisham, you're the Palestinian. You were born into this conflict. You're, in a sense, you're a refugee because you were born in a refugee camp, although you've been living around the world since, and you're here in the U.S. teaching. What do you think of what Miko just said, and what are the Palestinians doing?
Well, everybody knows, Mark, including the Israelis, the Americans, and even the Palestinians, that the two-state solution has been dead for many, many years. The wall that the Israeli government has built on the occupied territories, separating Palestinians from Palestinians, dismembering the Palestinian homeland, creating a number of reservations on the West Bank and besieging Gaza completely, makes the prospects for any Palestinian state absolutely impossible.
Then what is the PA? What is the PA all about? What's going on in Ramallah? What was Arafat doing?
We all know quite well that the Palestinian Authority, Abbas, is a byproduct of the Oslo process, which has meant really to further pacify the Palestinian people. The Palestinian Authority is defunct. The Palestinian Authority is corrupt. Abbas is completely distant from the aspirations, the wishes, and the desires of the Palestinian people. As a matter of fact, more often than not, he has stood in a vehement opposition to the aspirations of his people, and I think this is a very regrettable state of affairs. So I don't think that anything can be really counted on the Palestinian Authority as far as the upholding the exercise of Palestinian rights is concerned.
All right. Well, one of you is a Palestinian, the other is an Israeli. I'm an American Jew who's been living in Washington a long time. Miko, my view is a little different about U.S. policy. I think the U.S. would love to see some kind of arrangement, some kind of settlement, but it's unable to pursue it because the power of the Israeli Jewish lobby is so great. And it's not just the lobby on Capitol Hill. It's all kinds of intersecting institutions, all kinds of media, that people in Washington realize they can't really pursue the policies that would be in the long-term interests of the United States. And this goes back to the debate between Truman and Secretary of State General Marshall way back when they were making the decision whether to recognize Israel in the first place. Would you agree to that amendment to your discussion?
I think it makes me. I have to smile when I hear you say that. America, with all its strength, with all its power, with all the money that it gives Israel, it can't manage to get Israel to change its policy. I mean, it's like, I don't know how. I mean, it's funny. I don't know what else to say.
Well,
The only reason bullies get their way is because nobody stands up to them.
That reminds me a little bit of discussions with Noam Chomsky, who sort of says the power of the Israeli Jewish lobby is not nearly as great as people talk about, and that the U.S. is really using Israel.
I think it's only strong because people allow it to be strong. I mean, bullies get their way because people let them get away with things. Now, you've got the tail wagging the dog here. You've got Israel, who's a small country, who depends on America. Is getting a lot of money from America, is being bribed by America to do whatever it is that it needs that it's doing, and the Israeli lobby is keeping Americans from pursuing their own interests. I mean, it doesn't even sound like anything that would make sense. I think this is the image that people like to portray, but it's a cop out. I don't think that there's really a problem. I think they should stop it the minute they choose to.
Well, it may be a difference in perspective.
And let's go stand up to the bullies.
We all live in different places, and we've all had different experiences, and I've been here in Washington where the power of what's called the Israeli lobby, the Jewish lobby, and the institutions around it and the people around it really is quite significant. But Hisham, what do you think about this American-Israeli Jewish lobby debate?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely don't want to sound academic about it, Mark. But it seems to be that there is a total convergence of interests between the United States and Israel. Israeli policies and policymakers have succeeded immensely to penetrate the makeup of U.S. Foreign policy making with regard to the Middle East and with regard to to several other regions in the world. In other words, when I hear Secretary of State Clinton, for example, the other day, talking about the insult Israeli leaders caused Biden when he was in the area by announcing the establishment of 1,600 new units in Jerusalem, the way she was talking, it was like lukewarm. She was even almost apologetic to the Israelis that she was talking about this. So this leads me to say that we're not talking about two entirely separate policies. We're talking about one policy molded together with overarching similar interests and objectives in the region. I mean, often, I really say that Palestine is occupied physically by the Israeli occupation, but the American mind, particularly on the part of the policymaker, is occupied psychologically and culturally by the Israeli occupation.
Well, of course, in addition, there's all the Arab states and the Arab League, and they certainly have played into this myth of the two-state solution because it seems to serve their own interests because they have nothing else to offer either, apparently.
But let's talk about what's alive, not about what is dead, Mark. The Arab League, the Arab state system, has collapsed. It has not been in existence to begin with. And therefore, even the sheer lip service they would pay to Palestinian statehood is not there anymore. The Arab state system is completely hopeless. The Arab state system is basically preoccupied to self-perpetuate, in self-perpetuation. It does not count as far as policy making and as far as changing realities on the ground whatsoever.
Well, one could go further. One could say the Arab states and the Arab regimes, the client regimes, are in a sense occupied as well. They're occupied by the American CIA, by the military, by the dominance of the superpower and the empire, and they really don't have, as you say, they're not really there. They're not really players.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You look at the statements published by Arab summits usually. It's a disgrace that at one point even Gaddafi himself published, one of those statements saying that it was approved by the United States because it came out, in public. So even Gaddafi said that. So what do we expect from the Arab state system? Really nothing.
Well, let's see what both of you think about this. I think the reason the Americans are so desperate to keep the two-state solution in the news and give the illusion that some kind of negotiations and progress is being made is because we're not in a pre-peace situation. We're in a pre-war situation. The region is arming, the tensions are growing, and the Americans and the Israelis, including the Europeans, are preparing to make sure that Iran, in one way or another, is kept not nearly as powerful as it wants to be. The Arab states are playing along because they're afraid of their own weakness. They don't really have any options. And the American, what this two-state solution now is all about is actually to mask the preparations for further regional control and maybe regional war by the U.S. and Israel. So, Miko, what do you think about that?
I think that's a little bit out of my league, or I may be out of that league. I think I just want to go back really quickly to something Hisham said about talking about what's alive rather than talking about what's dead. I don't think anybody, I don't think even George Mitchell thinks there's any chance in the world for a two-state solution to ever materialize. There's this so-called threat of if this doesn't work out, the two-state solution does not work out, then we're somehow all stuck with this horrible other option, which is one democratic pluralistic state. And my argument is I think this would be the best thing for everybody. I think there's nothing better than a pluralistic society. There's nothing better than a pluralistic democracy. I think the Middle East always thrived when there was pluralism and when there were equal rights, and there was a sense of there wasn't one side that was trying to hoard the control in its own hands. And I think the more we talk about the possibilities and the opportunities that both people are going to have once there is a democracy over there, once there is a pluralistic democracy where everybody has equal rights, I think the more we talk about that, the more we change the conversation. I think both in America and in Israel, everybody wants to keep the conversation on Iran, and I quite frankly think the whole conversation on Iran is a smokescreen so that nobody talks about the settlement. Nobody talks about the 12,000 political prisoners that Israel is holding. Nobody talks about the atrocities in Gaza. Nobody talks about children who are being arrested or taken out of their homes and arrested without due process at 2 o'clock in the morning. And these are things. This is part of the reality of Palestinian life on a daily basis.
Absolutely, we have to come back.
About Iran, the less we talk about this other stuff. So my tendency is to always come back to this and say, this is really the conversation we should be having. If these guys want to talk about Iran, they can talk about Iran all day. It's not going to change the reality that Israel is violating human rights. Israel is violating civil rights. Israel is violating who knows how many international laws. Israeli commanders are afraid to leave Israel now because they might be prosecuted in Europe, so they don't want to go anywhere, which I think is a good thing. More and more Israeli activities are being boycotted, and Israeli products are being boycotted. And I think this is where exactly where it needs to be. My sister just came back. She was part of the Russell Tribunal in Barcelona.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
And
then Hisham, we're going to come right to you, but let's hear about this from Miko.
Oh, no, this is fine. This is absolutely fine. No.
Miko, tell us just a bit about the Russell Tribunal, or maybe we'll do that next week.
Well, all I'm saying is, what they're doing is they're putting together a solid case to push European governments to boycott Israel and to pressure Israel into releasing prisoners and dealing with the whole civil rights and human rights issue vis-a-vis the Palestinians. So I think this is a far more, I think it's a constructive kind of conversation, because the possibility, I think, of a pluralistic democracy in Israel-Palestine, I think is a realistic one. I think it's a good one. I think it'll be a positive change for everyone. And I think, again, the more we talk about the two-state solution, the more we are helping, the status quo, helping them.
Okay.
The status quo.
Well, Hisham, you teach political science, and you have a grasp of the region, so I made some comments about the two-state solution being a deception because we're in a pre-war rather than a pre-peace situation. What's your take on that?
Well, I fully agree with both of you, actually, with Miko and with what you said, Mark. The two-state solution is basically a euphemism, used as a euphemism for further pacification of the Palestinian people, in particular their leadership, as a way to buy more time, especially that the term is constantly coined during a process where everybody knows that the two-state solution is unworkable given the current recipe of conditions and circumstances in the occupied territories. There is not enough land, there is not enough political sovereignty, there is absolutely no way that a Palestinian state can be established under the current set of conditions and circumstances.
Well,
and the United States has nothing else to talk about. The United States cannot talk about a one-state solution. The United States finds itself unable to talk about a no-state solution. Therefore, the only process that it constantly keeps tackling is the two-state solution to keep the handful of Palestinian negotiators going, and to give them false hope, to give the Palestinians false hope that something down the road might be achieved.
Well, the irony of this situation is I'm here in Washington, D.C. with all the think tanks and all the congressional hearings, and this discussion would never be allowed in any of the think tanks or any of the meetings that takes place here. It's always about what we're calling the deception and the illusion. And, of course, that's the reason we have Wash Report in the first place. Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting discussion. Professor Hisham Ahmed, Palestinian born in Dheisheh refugee camp, Miko Peled, an Israeli who is living in the United States and the son of one of the commanders of the Six-Day War. Thank you both very much. I'm Mark Bruzonsky in Washington, the publisher of Wash Report.